The lightning bird, or the impondulu, is a creature in the folklore of the tribes of South Africa, including the Pondu and the Zulu. Now, impondulu translated is lightning bird, and it takes the form of a black and white bird, the size of a person, which is said to summon thunder and lightning with its wings and its talons. It's like a vampire creature associated with witchcraft, and often familiar to a witch or a witch doctor, which attracts, and this bird will attack the witch's enemies. It's said to have an insatiable appetite for blood, and sometimes it takes the form of a beautiful young man who seduces women. On that note, I'd like to welcome Jeremy Borg to the South African Chamber of Commerce Lightning Talks, as well as June Whiteman. These two amazing people are going to be sharing their story, their life, their business in their lightning talk. Jeremy is the co-founder and winemaker of Painted Wolf Wines, and his path into the wine trade started with selling wine for small California wineries as part of the winemaking team at the Rosenblum Cellars, where he developed basic winemaking skills. Wine and Wilddogs, how Southern Africa's most endangered carnivore inspires a wonderful business, great wine, and sustainable conservation funding. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you so much for having me. As Dawn mentioned, I was in California. I was making a little bit of wine, doing a bit of stuff, and I got an opportunity to come out to South Africa to visit my family in the Christmas of 1993, and met a young woman who worked for a safari camp in Botswana for Lloyd's Camp in Chobe National Park, and by accident ended up going to work there for a couple of years as the camp cook. It was a little unusual to have a man as the camp cook. It was normally a young lady who had some cordon bleu cooking experience, but for me it was a revelation. It was a journey back to the space of my childhood. Grew up in Zimbabwe and in Malawi, and grew up as a bosboki, and that stuff stays in your soul all your life. So got to Botswana, met this lovely lady, and eventually got married under a big acacia tree in the African bush. And rather drunkenly on my wedding day, my bride and I made a pact that we would try and do something to help with the conservation of African wild spaces in the broadest context. Now, I was very blessed to work in California for what one could only term as hippie entrepreneurs, for guys that believed that the skill that you have is something that you should use to give a broad context to life, to put energy back into your society, and actually to do good. For them, their entrepreneurial skills, and these were bright people, were not just to make money. They were actually to build community and build society around them. And I took this on board. This is a very important philosophy. Came back here, got involved with all kinds of different things, and eventually time came to look to start a wine company. And that promise that my bride and I had made on our wedding day sort of permeated through my head, and tried to look for a way in which we could fulfill this obligation, in which this sort of hippie business philosophy could find a space and find expression in what I wanted to do. And I searched around for a very, very long time, had lots of different conservation ideas. And then one morning, I was actually already making a little bit of wine, and I was trying to find the right space. One morning, a picture like this popped up through my letterbox. It was a Africa Geographic magazine, and it was an article captioned "The Natal Painted Wolf Project," and it was about the reintroduction of African wild dogs into the parks of Natal. So anybody who knows anything about wild dogs probably knows them as being fierce, terrible hunters who kill things wantonly and are really completely out of control. But that's actually not what they really are. They are animals with an unbelievably sophisticated social structure, very, very incredible community. Everything that African wild dogs do is for one purpose. It is to allow the alpha female to raise puppies. They're having great compassion for one another, great camaraderie. I mean, their social structure is way beyond that of anything apart from higher primates, elephants, and maybe dolphins. I mean, they're very sophisticated animals, much maligned and much persecuted. In fact, I mean, they are the most endangered large mammal in the southern half of Africa. I mean, in South Africa, there's only something like 450 adult African wild dogs. If you put it into context, there's 11,000 rhinoceroses. Just some context. Anyway, this little creature arrived on my doorstep, and I was most intrigued initially by the name. I thought, oh, painted wolf, that's an interesting name. Did a trademark search, found I could register the name. And the name, it's a very dynamic name. And anytime you want to do anything with a brand or want to do something with, a product that hopefully is going to capture people's imagination, if it's dynamic and the name is dynamic and the concept is dynamic, it's you're already halfway there. You're down the road. So this very interesting concept popped on my desk. I did a trademark search. It was registrable. So boom. And then on the back of that, I started to think about how African wild dogs are, my experiences with them, which I must say in Botswana were fleeting because we lived in an area with a significant number of lions and hyenas, both of which are great competitors for wild dogs. And actually, one of the major causes of death for African wild dogs is lions killing them. But anyway, I started to think about this creature, and I began to realize that African wild dogs, in their social structure and their dynamic and their incredible energy and their persistence and everything that they do, that would allow me to explain a business model that was similar to what my friends in California were doing. I needed to raise funds. South Africans, the ones that I know, on the whole, generally don't go big for things unless they're going to make a lot of money out of them. They like to make cash. But this idea of actually wrapping this social structure around wild dogs got some interest and some traction. And written into the business plan was the fact that we would donate a portion of our turnover to conservation on an annual basis. I had no idea how it was going to work. It was part of the plan. So off we went. I financed originally with a sort of crowdfunding thing, £13,000 from mates in UK, and off we went. And then we needed significantly more money. So the idea was to construct a pack of individuals who brought the skills and the types of resources that a wine company needs. And wine business is a very multifaceted business. It's an agricultural business, a manufacturing business, a marketing business, a business with great legal complexity. It's a space where there are many, many, many things that one needs expertise in to be able to navigate through the system well. And the concept was to take the concept of a pack and to populate this business with these type of individuals who would bring that different skill set to me. I mean, I'm an individual who can think a lot. I'm not terribly skillful. I mean, but I can conceptualize and put stuff together and motivate people to move forward. So I guess I'm a bit like, well, I guess alpha males and wild dog packs are considerably more skillful at wild dog stuff than I am at wine stuff. But I'm good at actually bringing the whole team along, and that's what we did. It started off modestly, and we had no idea who we were going to where the conservation was going to go, who was going to get the money. I'm probably running out of time, aren't I? But anyway, we went down this road, and eventually, I mean, there's so many more stories, but eventually, how it's ended up is that we have relationships with two of the most outstanding conservation organizations that you can imagine. I mean, the Tusk Trust in the United Kingdom gets basically 5% of my revenue from UK sales on an annual basis. And they've done that ever since we started. And then I'm involved in something in South Africa with something called the Wilddogs Range Extension Program. And part of the conservation strategy for dogs is to find new locations for them. They need an enormous amount of space. And the negotiating and navigating new locations for dogs to go to is complex and expensive. And that's what we do. So when you slurp a lovely bottle of painted wolf like this wine, which is actually called Lightning. Oh, there we are. Lightning wine, lightning talks, you gotta love it. A portion of what we do goes into it's about 5% of my turnover, which is significant for a small business. But it's been a wonderful, incredible journey. And I'm just going to say one little last thing. I know I have to go. But the association with Tusk got me to go to dinner at Windsor Castle at a dinner hosted by Prince William, and on another occasion I actually got to go to the Royal Geographical Society for another dinner hosted by him, and I got there a little bit late. I was doing something and the coppers stopped me. Oh, and they looked at it and saw my invitation and it was all cool, and then they said, "You have to wait, mate." So I parked myself on the pavement. Two black Range Rovers zoomed up, and out got a fellow and opened the door, and it was William and Kate got out, and it was just after she'd had her first baby, and it was incredible. She looked so slender. She was wearing this incredible dress with these big gold sequins in, absolutely beautiful. And anyway, they went in, and then they allowed me to go in. And first of all, Ronnie Wood and his lady went in before me, which was great. This old Rolling Stone with this incredibly delectable young lady. She went through, and then I wandered through. And as I walked into the building, there was a waiter with a thing of champagne on the thing, and I went and grabbed a glass and started necking it down. He said, "Oh, you can't have that. That's for His Majesty." So I was like, "Oh, well, it's a bit late now." So I got the Dom Perignon that was supposed to be for the royal party, and had a glass of that. So I mean, these are these serendipitous things that I would have never in my wildest imagination have dreamt that I would be in an environment like that, and enjoying this thing. So that's sort of what's come through a space which has been about actually taking the skill that you have and turning it into something that does good. And I think everybody can do it, but you need to plan it. You can't just wake up tomorrow well, you can, but it's more difficult. But if you plan it and it's part of your business plan, your business model, you can do this, and anybody can do it. And there's so many wonderful things for us to fix. I think my lightning has flashed about 4 times so far. So I'm going to say thank you very much and have a lovely evening. And Gerard, who I know some of you know, is a place that you can buy painted wolf if you wish a little glass of something delicious. And after that, I'm going to say cheers. It's nighttime. I'm allowed to have a drink. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. I think you could have told them that you were the official, the taster. The royals have a taster to make sure that the food isn't and the wine isn't poisoned. So you could have been in that role.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you I needed resuscitating straight afterwards.
Thank you very much. So, what's interesting about the lightning bird is that it is believed to manifest itself only through lightning, except to women. And that's when it reveals itself as a bird. I would like to welcome our next bird. That didn't go very well. June, you're not a bird at all. June is an experienced virtual assistant based on the Isle of Man, providing expert online support to help grow businesses. She has been molded by life. She has 4 girls. She's got a wonderful husband called Martin, and she's an introvert. but she's been able to adapt to the life of being a virtual assistant. And thanks to her wonderful clients, doors have continued to open to reveal the world that she had no idea even existed. And she feels like she steps into Narnia pretty much every day. So June is going to tell us a bit about being an alien on an island and how she came to live on the Isle of Man.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Thank you for that introduction. And I just want to say how lovely it is to see so many friends and family on this call. It's making me quite emotional. Just to give you some history, our spaceship landed on the Isle of Man about 20 years ago. In fact, August this year, it will be 20 years ago. And listening to Jeremy talk about planning, well, a certain amount of planning went into the move, because when you move countries, it's a fairly complicated business. But in terms of what were we going to do when we got here, well, that was, we'll find something and we'll make it work. And happily, we did. But it was a little rocky to start with. And Joe and I came first, our youngest daughter, a very reluctant 15-year-old, I might add, wanting to know why we had to leave South Africa. But happily, she will now tell you that it was the best thing that ever happened. So I'm very pleased that we did it. And Martin followed afterwards. In fact, Bonnie came first, and she went straight into college and started her beauty course. And then Joe and I came, and Bonnie had found us accommodation, which was great. And we didn't have any furniture, of course, so we'd borrowed camping chairs, and mother-in-law worked for Save the Children, so she was able to kit us out with all manner of things. And Martin came in the October. And I just had to, my priority was to find a job as quickly as possible. And I went around the employment agencies and found myself a secretarial job. And I thought I had quite a good knowledge of Word or Microsoft Office. Turns out that I didn't. I had a very minimal knowledge. So I kind of winged my way around various admin posts, kind of learning things as you go. And I did. I eventually sort of found myself in a situation where I was fairly enjoying what I was doing. I started working for an interior design company, and Martin settled really well. We opened a ceramic studio, and he and Bonnie ran that. And it was interesting how different Martin's approach was. I was quite. I won't say I had a refugee mentality, but I was definitely, I did have a bit of I was in a victim space. And Martin wasn't. He was very happy to surround himself with all the photos and all the memorabilia of our life in South Africa. And I just thought, nobody here wants to know this, because interestingly, as much as the people are lovely, nobody was particularly interested. Nobody was asking, well, why are you here? And I think that's why I felt like an alien and an invisible one, because nobody really wanted to know. And I think now I understand that there were so many South Africans, and they constantly come to the Isle of Man. So there was no novelty there. It was just another South African. And listening to Jeremy's tale of helping himself to the champagne, I think we do exude a confidence that maybe is a little bit unsettling to a lot of Brits. And I think we need to just, or I just felt that I needed to sort of tone that down a bit. However, I did manage to sort of blag my way into various positions, and was very happy. And people here are incredibly accommodating and made us very, very welcome. Opening the ceramic studio was a huge launch pad, because it gave us the opportunity to be who we really are. And for Martin particularly, it was a whole new career for him. He was a shoe designer. We'd had a shoe factory in South Africa. So it was a completely different type of career. But I think now there's probably every household on the Isle of Man has probably got something that's been painted by somebody in Craftwork Studio. And that says a lot. And he's loved by many. And he was paid such a lovely compliment recently when I I met a gentleman who I haven't seen for many years, and he told me that Martin was one of the most inspirational people he'd ever met. So there you go. I was very proud. I am very proud. Oh, my light's just gone out. Can you still see me? It's been flashing at me. So yes, how I became a virtual assistant, it was 2015. We got quite a scare with Martin. He was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. And I thought, oh, well, if I'm going to be a carer, I need to work from home. And I did a virtual assistant course and got myself all ready. And it was, I think, 2016 that, oh no, it was 2015 that we got the good news. At the beginning of the year, we were told that he had motor neuron, and mid-year we were told, no, he doesn't. He's got something called myasthenia gravis, which is treatable. So we got treatment straight away. In fact, we just got back from South Africa on the farewell trip, saying goodbye to everybody. And we got back home to a phone call to say, please come in, see the doctor. And he started on this course of treatment, and we haven't looked back. He's been incredibly well and was able to carry on with the studio. He's just retired. He retired at the beginning of this year. But it turns out that working from home is not a part-time job. So basically, I gave up a full-time job for an all-time job. So there is no end. And I know there are many of you on this call who know what I mean. And we were very fortunate. Jo decided that she wanted to start the business with me. And we did in 2016. And Jo rides. And she was chatting to one of her stable friends who said that her stepmother was looking for a virtual assistant. And her stepmother happens to be Sharon. So Jo and I met Sharon in the November of 2016 and were fortunate enough to tick the boxes that she was looking for. And we started working with her pretty much straight away. And that's been my Narnia. Sharon has introduced me to a world I really didn't know existed. And shortly after I started working for Sharon, she became the chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce, which is this connection and why you're all here tonight. And that has been a wonderful journey because it's introduced me to a lot of wonderful people on this call. And we have formed a collaboration that has been quite remarkable. There are strengths that we can rely on. So if anybody needs to know anything, there's guaranteed to be somebody within the circle who can help or find somebody who can help. And we're just a wonderful supportive group. And I'm very grateful to you all. You've been just wonderful for me. So thank you very much indeed. And that's my story.
Thank you very much, June. And I'm sure the Isle of Man loves having you there.
Oh, thank you.
I would like to open it up, the floor to questions. And I know that you will all have questions for the two J's, June and Jeremy. I'm going to start off with a question. Jeremy, what are you going to leave behind in 2020?
What am I going to leave behind in 2020?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to leave 2020 behind in 2021, that's for certain.
Good. And what are you going to leave behind in the year that you don't want to bring into the new one?
Gosh. That's quite a difficult question because everything that I do is about process. Nothing is without its past. I mean, everything that you do is a product of what happened in the past, whether it be good or bad. So, I mean, as a wine producer in South Africa with various difficulties in the year, and I mean, we're currently not allowed to sell wine domestically for the third time. We've had a lot of very significant business challenges, actually, but we have had a huge blessing. In March this year, last year rather, when things became extremely difficult for us and we were not able to export, and it really looked as though we were staring down the barrel of a gun. After trying to negotiate unsuccessfully with my bank to get a credit extension, I wrote a Facebook post one morning and pushed it out, and a man in New Zealand called Peter Eastwood, who made a great deal of money as he was the world's leading supplier of home brew equipment and stuff. Anyway, he picked up my email and he's used the cash that he made from the sale of his business to do all kinds of philanthropic things, including he's involved in Kasiri in the Lowvelds with rhino and elephants conservation. And anyway, the long and short of it is that he gave me a $50,000 United States interest-free unsecured loan to help see us through, and bought 20 hours of time with his daughter-in-law who lives in the Netherlands and is a very accomplished branding expert. And she took our business apart and helped actually redefine what we did, and gave us confidence in spite of the fact that we lost 1/3 of our turnover last year, to make changes to our business that we would not have done without this catastrophe. So I'm going to take from 2020 just good stuff and
Fantastic.
move it forward. And the other thing that happened is that most of our local commercial business collapsed, but we were able to build direct to consumer business, which gave us more margin. And I took that additional margin, in spite of the fact that our total revenue declined significantly. I took the additional margin and I increased my per bottle donation to the EWT. So, one must always find the good stuff. It's very easy to wallow in the tragedy and the difficulty, and it's difficult being a supplier of alcoholic beverages in South Africa at the moment. But yeah, so onwards and upwards. Here we go.
Brilliant. Thank you, June. If somebody wants to run their own business or work from home, what are the top 3 tips that you've got for them?
Dawn, I would say try and find your niche as soon as you can. I was quite sort of shotgun approach with mine, thinking that you're a PA and you can pretty much do anything, but it's a lot easier if you can find your niche. Be open to upskilling, and I did a course, a VA course with a lady called Amanda Johnson, and I would certainly recommend that. To start with, if you and let people know what you're doing. I was kind of quite closed about it, thinking, it might not work, so I'm not going to tell anybody. But the best thing is just to tell everybody, and I think that's what's come out of our association as well, is that the more people who know about you and the more networking you do. And I think that the trick with networking for me was not to go and talk about me, but to go and hear what other people are doing and to try and determine what their needs are so that you can fit and fill in.
I totally agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. If anybody else has a question for either Jeremy or June, we'd love to hear the question.
Can I ask Jeremy to please hold up his wine bottles so that we can see those labels again, Jeremy? I particularly want Bonnie, our daughter, to see the painted wolf one, which is just gorgeous.
Would you just bear with me a second, because I only have
to go and fetch one.
I'm just going to go and get one. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions while Jeremy's away? Sharon.
June, I thought that was absolutely excellent. Very proud of you for for that presentation. You saw the calmness by which June gave her delivery, telling us that she's an introvert, she lies. So was I as well, but I also think I'm lying under that circumstance now. But the question I asked June, and it's something that I have to deal with my customers, is how do you cope when the world around you is getting angry, customer wants it yesterday, they don't want it done the way you just did it, you've done something that's not quite right, and you've got more than one boss, or it's coming from multiple directions. How do you mentally and emotionally cope? And she doesn't yell at me.
You drink painted wolf wine. You drink painted wolf wine.
So I'm terribly unprepared for this. But what I've got is I've got one of the den labels over here. Lift
it up.
And you folks
lift it up. Oh, okay. Isn't that beautiful?
So that's but I mean, our whole thing was to get friends to do all the stuff that we do. So the label artwork has been done by a lady that used to work with my wife and I in Botswana, and other label artwork is done by Lynn Barry, who's a very well-known artist in Zimbabwe, who we've been involved with for a number of years and have done some fundraising things with her. Actually, I mean, this is a crazy thing. Some years ago, I did a bicycle ride from Monopools to Gonrazu, right across Zimbabwe, and we did a fundraising evening at Mukuvisi Woodland. I guess there's probably some Zimbos amongst us over here, but Mukuvisi is a lovely little nature reserve right in the middle of Harare, which still exists and still functions very well with sable antelope and giraffe and zebras and all kinds of things that you wouldn't really expect. Yes, Michelle, indeed. So yeah, we did this fundraising, and I couldn't believe it. We raised $80,000 in Zimbabwe for a variety of different conservation organizations. It's mostly Lynn. I mean, Lynn's paintings are magnificent, and there's one on the wall behind me over here. And they have a great following. And when she puts them on auction, people in the United States and in other places where folks have got bucks to drop into the system support and do it. But I was absolutely gobsmacked. And these ladies in Harare just put the most splendid evening on. We had marquees and music, and it was some. I just didn't imagine that in that place that is seemingly so broken, that something so amazing could be done.
Like you say, it's seeing the positives. So June, sorry, your answer to Sharon's question.
I was avoiding it.
No, I'm not going to let you forget.
Sharon, you talk about that swan all the time. I think, oh gosh, meeting expectations, it's the one thing that keeps me awake at night. I just find it so, it's stressful. I think getting the right information to start with helps. So sort of listening, and it's really difficult when you're very busy and you're trying to keep dozens of balls in the air. And maybe just making space for yourself. I do find at the beginning of the day, I have time for me. And I found on the days that I don't do it, it's not such a great day. And I just try and tap into the wisdom of the universe and just be quiet and ask for wisdom and just ask for peace, and that I would do a good job during the day. That's
well, it clearly works. It clearly works, June.
Oh, thanks, Dawn.
Does anyone else have any questions for Jeremy and June?
Hi, sorry, it's Bonnie here, June's daughter. I have a question for Jeremy. Jeremy, is it possible to buy your wine in the Netherlands? And may I ask the name of the marketing company?
The company is called African Wines.
Thank you very much for that.
And we support painted dog conservation in Hwangi through our sales of wine in the Netherlands, up in Zimbabwe.
That's brilliant. I'm going to look you up.
Thank you. Then they're very nice people who run that business as well. Very enthusiastic, and people they've made their whole raison d'etre to stock South African wines that are cause-based wines, of course, charity wines that support various charities.
Jeremy, is that the same company that did your branding for you?
No, it's a different thing. The lady that did the branding is actually Peter Eastwood's daughter-in-law.
Okay. Do you know what her name is?
Saskia Eastwood, her name is.
Okay, thank you.
Very clever, very, very astute young woman.
Well, clearly did your business a lot of good.
Well, yeah, it's work in progress now, because it's changing our direction, and one of the struggles actually with it, I mean, as a winemaker, I'm interested in trying to make high quality wines, and I make various parcels of quite small quantity handmade wines, and they should ideally sell for a reasonably decent amount of money. But when you align your business with a rambunctious, rather smelly, and often maligned mammal, to be able to find the space between that and what people perceive as being a premium wine space is a little bit complicated, to say the least. And I think what Saskia has done is to try and help us figure out how we can bring the two things together. And so yeah, there's definitely some changes that we are in the process of putting through to try and actually make our offering more premium. I mean, the association between wine labels that have animals on them and inexpensive wine is indelibly stamped in many people's minds. And it's to move the paradigm is the sort of challenge.
Just not a Johannesburger, is it?
Yeah, there's or what's it? Autumn harvest crackling. Which I used to drink as a child in Malawi. Steal my parents' wine.
Any more questions? We've got these two lovely, interesting people, and it'd be lovely to if we've got a couple more questions before we finish off. Tanya.
I just wanted to say how very much I knew I was going to enjoy this evening, but June and Jeremy just both so lovely. And June, you just have that effect. You just bring calm to everything, every situation. I am so envious. I would love to have that quality, and it is a genuine quality. And myasthenia gravis, it's so weird because that's a condition my mum has, and it's very, very rare. And it's so weird to hear that Martin has that too. It must have been really, really scary, but it's still something I know that it's an ongoing thing that you kind of have to live with. But it's, I suppose, not motor neuron disease, which kind of thought it was initially. And Jeremy, just such a pleasure, and I'm so glad that it's going. You had this kind of lifeline for you, in March, and good news, because I heard that the UK wine sales of South African wine, and Gerard might be able to, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was an article recently that it's gone up by 23%. The wine sales in the South African wine sales in the UK. So yes. That space where, because South African New World wine has always been seen as, like the cousin you don't really want to talk about. How can it compete with the French wines, whatever? But actually, there's some fantastic fine wines in South Africa, and that's kind of making the price range up. So hopefully, fingers crossed, South African wine will be up there with all the other fine wines, and small batches and those kind of things. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed this evening. So thank you both very much. So no question, just an observation.
Thank you. Just an interesting comment based is that most of the or many of the top wine journalists, the Oz Clarks and the like, and are of the view that South Africa is the most exciting of all of the new wine countries, with the greatest diversity in style and really extremely high quality wine. But those wines are made in very small quantities and are not the ones that one buys from Tesco's or from Sainsbury's, which is where most people buy their South African wine. But the industry is incredibly dynamic, and it's also driven by young people. It's young folks who have no bounds and who are really trying to push the space of winemaking out. And very, very. It's quite different actually here from where I worked in California. I mean, you think of Americans as being open-minded and stuff, but that's very few. Most of the American guys were trying to be formulaic and copy the wines that were scoring the very high points and the very expensive ones. And where here, it's all over the place. It actually makes it more complicated from a marketing perspective for people to actually get their head around what South Africa is about as a wine producing country, because we're everywhere, all over the radar screen.
Yeah, so just to mention, if anybody in the UK does want Painted Wolf wine, it's not available. I'm kidding.
Have you drunk it all? Thanks, Dawn. Well done. Your next shipment's on the way.
Gerard Perold of the Perold Wine Cellars, who's on the call, has the Painted Wolf wine. So if anyone is interested, it is a lovely, lovely wine. I must say, I love it, and I love the labels. I'm always entranced by the labels. I'm cheap to market to. Anyone just has a pretty label and I'll buy it. But the wine is sensational and I love it.
Thank you.
Jeremy, I've got a question from Martin for you.
Yes.
Jeremy, as a tiny chocolatier, I wondered if you were making or were thinking of making a, what do you call them? A fortified wine.
I would love to make fortified wine, but I'm afraid I'm a little bit of a stickler for tradition. And if I do it, I would like to make it with Portuguese varietals, with Touriga Nacional and Tinta Cao and Tinta Barroca, and make a port style fortified wine. I actually have an investor in my company, which is one of the very best wine producers in the Douro, called Quinta de Portal. And it's sort of been something that I would love to do. But it's maybe a project for another day. I'm actually sort of slightly done with vanity projects, because I've lost so much money doing things like that. Not like making fortified wine, but doing funny little things and not having a great market for them. But you can enjoy chocolate actually with something like a good rich pinotage that has nice ripe fruit and wood is beautiful with dark chocolate. I mean, the little glass of red wine that I had in my hand earlier on, shortly before eating that, I had a piece of Lindt 70% dark chocolate, and they worked actually quite well together.
That's interesting. The first time that June and I had fortified wine was going back into the mid-80s.
Yes.
And it had rained.
There were tremendous floods.
There was tremendous floods in Natal.
In the Cape.
In the Cape. Sorry, that's right. And it destroyed, it spoiled a lot of the grapes. And what they did at the end of it, the grapes that they thought were spoiled, they decided to make a fortified wine from it, or a
Yes.
sweetened wine. I don't know what you'd call it.
Yes.
And the name of the wine I remember very well. It was called La Grande Deluge.
Okay. That's cute. I love it.
Brilliant.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So out of a disaster came something really exciting. And that was the
Yes.
first time that I'd even thought of having a sweet wine at the end of a meal.
Dessert wine.
A dessert wine.
It's historically, sweet wine has been South Africa's strong point. The wines of Constantia, the famous wines that were drunk by Napoleon and by King George IV and whatever, were all fortified sweet wines, normally made with muscat grapes, but it's something that South Africa has a real competitive advantage of. The rather unfortunate thing is that these styles of wines are not fashionable any longer, and
Maybe that's something for the future.
Yeah,
We'll have to make them fashionable. Come
Make
on.
fashionable.
We can drink it and make it fashionable.
Absolutely. We have our really, really good friends in north of Italy. They're just north of Milan. They've been friends of ours through the shoe trade for 40 years, I think. And Armida always serves a series of wines through a meal.
Yes.
And always finishes up with a dessert wine. Well,
Yes.
no.
One
He
beyond.
finishes up with grappa, but the 45, the sweet dessert wine is always one of the last wines that he serves.
Would that be Vinsanto, possibly?
Yes, more than likely.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's a very special thing too.
So lovely to go through them, and it's not that you drink a lot more actually, because they're all each of the wines that he puts on are to enhance the food that he's particularly serving at that moment.
Yes.
Oh, how lovely. Sounds fantastic.
Can I ask Jeremy a question?
Go ahead.
I'm originally from Constantia, by the way, so I grew up, my home was in the middle of the vineyards there, but there's a wine called the Chocolate Block from Franschhoek. Have you heard of it?
The chocolate block is from Bockenhurtskloof in Franschhoek.
Yeah.
The grapes are not from Franschhoek, though. The grapes are from Swartland in Wellington.
Right.
It's an incredibly commercially successful project. I certainly am aware of it.
I've got 2 bottles here.
That's one for both hands.
Yeah.
John, did you have a question?
Yes, thanks, Dawn.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for the 2 really inspired speeches, and it's wonderful to put a face to June, because we've spoken so many times, but I've actually never met her before, so she'll no longer be virtual to me. She'll be very much real, and a very inspiring story from June. And likewise from Jeremy. I'm actually speaking from Madeira, where I've discovered another kind of sweet wine, which I guess is quite similar to Vinsanto and Sauterne in the French equivalent. And I haven't actually been drinking wine for about 20 years, but this sort of sweet wine with a little tiny sherry glass of sweet wine after the meal in the evening has gone down very well. But the question I want to ask Jeremy is, Johan Rupert once said to me at a charity dinner I was at, he said, "Don't waste your money with wine. You never make any money out of wine." He was generally complaining. maybe it's all relative. But the question I wanted to ask is the way you responded to the pandemic by this amazing bit of serendipity where you well, not entirely serendipity, because it was based on your networking skills, where you put out a message and ended up banking $50,000, which must have been very welcome at that time. Now, the way you changed your business, as I understood it, is to go more into online sales. Is that correct, or was it a bit more complicated than that?
Well, initially we didn't have the infrastructure to do online sales ourselves. We actually did it through a third party, which wasn't as happy as it could have been. What I did is that I sat down and I actually went through the address book on my email on my computer, and I wrote a letter to about 1,000 people, personal letter to about 1,000 people, over a period of about 2 weeks, and we got 300 orders, and that brought something like 350,000 rand into my company, which was, in addition to the loan, was very significant in keeping us afloat. And yeah, that was just actually flipping graft.
Can you share your email list with the rest of us, because it clearly is quite lucrative?
Yeah, well, I'm not very organized, so I didn't have all of the sort of social media setup and MailChimp and all that stuff set up, and you know, when you start to look through 15 years of contacts who you've spoken to in email, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there, and a lot of the addresses just dropped out. I mean, their people were no longer there, and they didn't. But I got enough respondents to actually put the framework of what's now I won't say an enormously successful online business, because we can do significantly better, but something that has enough people to make it sustainable. I mean, we just did a small offer last week. I mean, we took 126,000 rand, and I know in UK terms that's not a lot of money, but I'm quite happy for a week's direct sales to take that amount of cash. It's you know, and that's ordered full margin as well, or
and
small discount.
Those people that you wrote to, had they had your wines before, or were they all newcomers?
No, some had. I mean, some were mates, some were schoolmates. Some had not had them before. It was really a mixed bag. You know, and so I think I mean, we're sitting in a commercial environment at the moment where a lot of people are struggling to sell their product. I mean, these various bans and all the other things that have gone on have put an enormous amount of strain on the South African wine industry. I mean, there's something like 40% of last year's crop, it remains unsold, and you know, for many people, it's a catastrophe. And for bargain hunters, it's a great time. I mean, there's lots and lots of things being offered cheap, but that's not the customer we need to sustain our business. We need customers who are interested in the fact that when they buy a case of wine from me, I'm going to donate 100 rand to the Endangered Wildlife Trust. So it's a sort of process of elimination to push it out there, and hopefully you find enough of those people that we're not going to be the cheapest, but when they support us, that there is another, there's something else to it. And something else that was interesting actually is that quite a lot of people that we sold wine to that were offered a discount were given an option to turn their discount back and donate it to the Endangered Wildlife Trust. And quite a lot of people chose, instead of to take the discount and put it into their pocket, to actually fund conservation with their discount. And that I found to be very encouraging.
And just a last question, if I may, is
Sure.
do you think your unique selling point is your product, or is it the way that you've marketed the product and the way you have contributed to other charities and the whole mindset?
Our USP is what we do for conservation. That's I mean, we've done well in various different things. The year before last, we were the winery of the year for Old Mutual Trophy Wine Show, which is quite a prestigious wine competition in South Africa. But the couple of wines that got us to that position were wines that I make something like 2,000 bottles a year of. So I mean, they're not. If you want, it's not really a commercial proposition of any significance. I mean, they're two little vanity projects that did well for us. But I mean, our USP is what we do for conservation, and I think the fact that it's in the DNA of our business. It isn't something that we just woke up on Tuesday and decided we were going to do a little conservation brand on the side. I mean, my wife and I both worked in conservation. My sister, who is very important in the company, made environmental films for the SABC for 20 years, and she's a board member of the African Pangolin Working Group. It's what we do. We do conservation, and making wine is the tool that allows us to do that.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're out of time, but I think if we think about both of you, June and Jeremy, I think it's about the human condition of survival, but also something that we have, grit, is Southern Africans, and I think both your stories reflect that in who we are, and no matter where we are in the world, we make it work. And, in your response, Jeremy, about 2020, and June, about your early time arriving on the Isle of Man, I mean, it is about survival and having grit. And I think that's one of the things I'm really proud about being an African, because I think that's a trait that we bring from where we were born and raised, and our DNA, I think. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us from around the world. It's lovely to see everybody. Please check out the Chamber website. We've got some wonderful events. Sharon, is there anything you want to mention urgently?
Thanks very much, Dawn. I thought that was an excellent evening, and it's so lovely and very rewarding for the Chamber to see how many people have attended from how many walks of life in different parts of the world. So thank you, everybody. It makes it for June and Jeremy an absolute honor. From my side, we have got probably anything up to 2, and in some cases 3 events a week over the next 2 months. We've got a lot happening, ranging from well-being, so just in case you need to do some navel gazing so you feel better in 2021, because a lot of people are trying to work out why the light at the end of the tunnel hasn't turned into daylight in 2021, the moment the clock's moved over into the new year. But you also must remember, today is the 21st. It's the 21st day of the 21st century, and there's one in between. It's another 21.
It's the 21st. It's the 21st day. I just saw it early on. Somebody said something.
I've got it here. I'll just find it. It was actually very.
Someone's having a 21st birthday. There you go. There's another one. Somewhere in the world.
21st.
Today's the 21st day of the 21st year of the 21st
century. That's right.
One we're missing. So,
and at 9 o'clock, that's 2100 hours.
Oh, goodness. So we'll make that in a few moments. We have some sort of key business style talks, but as I mentioned, we've got things going in terms of well-being as well. And the business ones, we've got inter-Africa regional trade. We have got African Free Trade Agreement and the impact that is having on intra-Africa development and how that is impacting as well on the trade from the UK. We are looking as well as having a session with the governor of the Reserve Bank. He's meeting with us in March, so hopefully I'll have a lot to share with us at that point in time. Another one, and through popular demand, in combination with the City of London, we'll be flighting the movie Life is Wonderful, again on the 11th of February, which is just around the corner. Anybody who has any links to South Africa, any understanding of human rights really has to watch that movie. Sir Nick Stadlin, a UK High Court judge, has done such credit to the exercise. John, who's on the line with us here as well, is also part of the charity that Life is Wonderful as well. We have got quite a few of them. So
we have a Cape Malay cooking class in February as well.
Yeah, we've got a cooking class in February. We're running some professional evenings, and we are running we're going to be approaching the chief exec of Standard Bank's Africa division. Her double-barrel surname has lost me from Shola. She was absolutely fantastic listening to her at the Africa Investment Conference yesterday, which was really enlightening to see how something that's Pan-African, I think there were only 4 South Africans in the entire lineup of the day. And you think we're so important. I think that sort of puts life into a bit of perspective for us. There are 52 odd countries in Africa. So that was really interesting. But all I just encourage you guys to do is have a look at our newsletters. If you haven't got one, if you don't get one, please register on our website, which is www.southaafricanchamber.co.uk. Just go for South African Chamber and you will find us. And register for our newsletters, read them. They come out once a month, but they give you links to all the things that we're up to. And there are so many things that we are doing and enjoying and sharing moments like this, because one of the things that's really critical for a membership organization that cannot meet each other is how do we network? And Dawn and Jeremy have given us such a lovely excuse with the leadership of Dawn to actually do some networking together, which we really, really did enjoy. So thanks. I've said more than my fair share. Dawn?
Well, thank you, everybody, and we hope to see you next time. Have a lovely evening.